Technology, such a blessing. Amen. Amen. Let's see. Got it. Mercy, don't got it. Mercy, day. Come on up here. And
I have a mug at home just like that. Well,
from Austin College?
Like it. No.
Oh.
Well, I could, but my daughter went to Austin College for a year and a half.
What years?
Oh, goodness gracious. My daughter was anorexic, and it was the safest environment that was close we could put her in, and she didn't succeed at it.
Oh. Okay.
She did 3/4 of a year and then came home for a while. And then she went to Georgetown, or Southwestern University,
Okay.
and succeeded. But it was a very safe, good environment for her to fail in, if you will.
Okay.
I mean, there were plenty of safety nets.
Good.
And so.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Sorry I'm running late. You can blame Bill Gates for that. And they choose to push out updates at times that are the least convenient for running your technology. So, all that being said, I thank you for your patience and glad that you are here. Even more delighted that we have Terry Cole with us, that you're going to get to know and to hear and to experience his work in ministry. And as a reminder to everybody and for those who have finally joined us online, thank you that we are broadcasting on the YouTube channel. And so for those of you who are at home, I invite you to please send me an email and let me know that you have joined us today. Everyone, as a reminder, at the end of today's class, I'm going to have some time for us to answer the 3 questions, and I want you to scan that QR code or follow the hyperlink, and that will take you to the website where I want you to be able to reflect back on the 3 questions. Another bit of housekeeping is we only have 2 more weeks left in the formal aspect of this class. Next week, we are going to have our field trip to Peace Lutheran Church, which is on 620. Go down Anderson Mill, turn left at the HEB, and head towards St. Thomas More, but it's before St. Thomas More. And they have the Peace Housing Project that we are going to meet with Reverend Carolyn Donovan, Albert Donovan, and who will share with us some of the vision behind that, and then give us a tour of what they're hoping to accomplish there at Peace Lutheran Church as far as for welcoming families experiencing homeless on site on their property. So we will, next Sunday, we will gather up in here only for just a few minutes to decide on carpool, and then we'll caravan around the corner over to Peace Lutheran Church. In 2 weeks, that will be our last Sunday, we will have our mission lab, and this will be a culminating opportunity for us to reflect back on all that we have heard through all of our special guests. I have been creating some summary reports for you at the end of each week, and then I will also be able to provide, in advance of that class, some summary reflections of all that you have provided back. So you remember a month ago, we did a survey, or we did a question in worship that all of the congregation responded to, and then for the last month after each class, each of you have been answering 3 questions. And so I'll be able to provide some themes, some elements that have been highlighted by y'all, and then we'll be able to do an activity in that last session together about next steps and discernment of where God might be calling us, okay? Those are some housekeeping items there. We don't always wear bib overalls to worship, but when we do, we don't notice it.
I was more intrigued by the pitchfork in worship, but, so be it.
Well, those are for other Sundays, depending on the scripture. So let's join together in prayer. Let us pray. Holy One, you have called us to this moment to explore the intersection of faith and compassion, May this space be a sanctuary for learning, for reflection, and inspiration. Guide our minds and our hearts to discern your ways of justice and love as we seek to be instruments of your peace. Amen. We are glad to have you. We want to give everyone an opportunity to introduce each other and ourselves. So Diana, I'm going to start with you. We'll work over to Joe, up to the Graysons, down to Cook, to Paul, and then Ryan, and then you, Terry, and then myself. And today it's what is your name and what is your go-to comfort food? Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow. Well, my name is Terry Cole, and these days, carbs don't like me. I would normally say tortillas and chips and salsa. But today, I would probably say chocolate and coffee.
Okay. Josh Robinson, and my true penultimate comfort food is sweet potato shepherd's pie. It's so good. See there, that's how you get the responses, Terry. Well, thank you, and I want to give you an opportunity to not only introduce yourself a little bit further and about how you came to launch this ministry, but then also we want to talk through some of the questions about what are your things that you're observing that are related to specifically youth and homelessness, but also what kind of systemic things yield homelessness, or why is it that there is a need for a youth ministry for those young people living out on the streets, and then joys and concerns. So let's start off with, who are you, where are you from, and how did God begin calling you into this ministry?
Sure. Now, your Zoom audience is over there, is that right?
Red dot's back at the back.
Red dot in the back. Okay, cool.
Where the clock is.
I have a loud enough voice to do this room, but I want to make sure I'm on the electronic for them.
Please,
That's probably going to work.
Whatever you need to do.
Well, I want to sit back, but I don't want to bang your mic.
You're good.
There we go.
Wow, sorry.
That's okay. So you can probably hear me now. So my name's Terry Cole, and I am, my church family is Covenant Presbyterian Church down the road. Greetings from there. And I founded this ministry almost 20 years ago. I started this work more than 20 years ago. And I started as a volunteer, so watch out. These little things that you do could lead to places that you are very unexpected. I did feel the call to mission work, and my family was like, excuse me, we are not becoming missionaries. This is not happening. I love to travel. I love foreign cultures. It's just my thing. I just get excited about it. But my family was like, no way. I was an electrical engineer for 20 years, had a nice living, but I felt the call to do mission, so I started doing short-term mission trips to Mexico, to Africa, to Cuba, to Asia. My business trips took me all around the world to places that people would go, ooh, I went there once, I would never go back there. And I'm like, why? And so I learned a lot about my shape. I love questions. I love people, different cultures. I don't hate, that's the wrong word too. I'm not turned off or turned away from poverty because I don't see the same thing that most people describe to me when I went to those places. Sure enough, I saw people who didn't have a lot. And I certainly saw people who needed some things, but I saw people who were very rich at the same time in ways that when I come home, I don't even see. Mm-hmm. And so there's much to be learned from these cultures, and there's much to be not destroyed in these cultures. And so anyway, that's just kind of where my heart went. And somehow or another, through all of this, I learned that I like to work with young adults who are in trouble. In Cuba, it was the young kids who went out and partied, and after an hour of knowing me, they were telling me things that might curl your hair about their lives and how unhappy they were. And it's like, why is this, right? And the same thing happened in Mexico. And so I paid attention to that, and I came home and I discovered there were homeless young adults in Austin. All I did was go to push food out of a window. But it really tugged at my heart, and I knew I was supposed to be doing that. The next 5 years were what I call my Jonah years. I knew I should be doing it. I was an engineer. An engineer you can't quit your job for God, and I don't have a social work degree. I don't have a ministry degree. I'm an engineer. You can't do this. And so I resisted, went the other way. And then 2008 came along. Anybody, with gray hair knows what happened in 2008. And my job was one of those that went away in 2008. And God didn't open a door. He blew off the whole side of the house in terms of starting the ministry for me. And 20 years later, here we are. We have 8 people who care and deeply know how to help homeless young adults in ways that few other people ever want to. And they are homeless. But oddly enough, they formed me. Going to their culture, I had to learn their culture and their ways, and they formed me. And they asked me, why are you nice? What do you want from me? Right? And my answer, the mission came from them. I want for you more stability, more sobriety, reconnecting with God, and finding a faith home. That's what I want for you. And oddly enough, you will notice that a home isn't even in the list. A home comes naturally as you do those things, but that's not even on the list. And so, anyway, that's what shaped me and where I came from. 25 years of high tech, and now almost the same amount of time working with homeless young adults. And I do want you to understand, homeless young adults in Texas means college age. They can be younger. And I never had an age limit for the first 10 years of our existence because it really was behavior-based. If you fit in with 23-somethings, it was fine with me. But as we grow, you need rules, you need some guidelines. So our age limit, if you're 28, you're a homeless youth in our opinion. I trusted Uncle Sam for a little while. They said if you were 23, you were a homeless youth, but I learned that they were missing the boat. People mature a little later, they make changes a little later, and so by not guiding them through those more mature years, they were making a mistake, not reaping the benefit of their investment, if you will.
So talk a little bit about what street youth ministry is. So I am a 24-year-old young adult in Austin, and someone says, hey, you need to go check out that street youth ministry. What is the experience? Why would they come visit you, and what are they going to experience when they do?
So we get calls from people who live up here, and it'll be something like, I'm being kicked out, I don't know what to do, where can I go? And a young adult of today, it's different than 20 years ago, a young adult of today is hoping there's a magic answer. And we're honest with them. It's like, there will be no place. Please do not go to the street. You need to find friends. You need to find couches to sleep on. You need to double up with somebody somewhere. You need to remedy your situation with whoever is kicking you out, because there will not be someplace better, right? So we first try to keep them from making that mistake. But once they've done that, and I hate to use the word mistake, I actually believe every one of our clients, we call them clients because we want it to be pretty professional, I actually think they're all on the path meant for them. They left a place that was worse than going and living on the street. But it's important that be true. If home can be fixed, they need to spend the time to do it. And so we try to prevent, and then when they call us, we're like, well, can I stay there? And it's like, no. Where can I stay? And like, well, you can get in line to stay at the Salvation Army, or you can get in line to stay at Urban Alchemy, or you can, we used to say the Arch, but I mean, the Arch is a pretty closed environment now. So you can get in line to try to stay at a place like that, but you really can't find shelter. You're going to have to adapt and figure out what it means to, as safe as possible, live outside. And I know that's not what you want to hear from a homeless ministry, but that's reality. That's the truth. There isn't 10,000 beds in Austin to house everyone, and if there were, 20,000 more would come here.
Well, and so we do have, and maybe not as much, but there certainly are, and I've encountered some migratory young persons, right,
Mm-hmm.
who pass through the area
Right.
and land here for a while and then move on to San Antonio or whatever.
We call those travelers. They used to take the form of train hopping.
Mm-hmm.
They still do, but we never see them in urban Austin because urban Austin became pretty uncomfortable with that. I didn't give you a very good picture. Once they've come to us, they come for clothing and food.
Okay.
We try to get them to stay for daytime safety, daytime fun, safe fun. And we sandwich access to clothing and food at the beginning and end of day. We sandwich it a bunch of groups in between. And so we're living a culture of sort of a thrift store full of clothes that is yours for the taking in reasonable quantities, and a fridge full of food that you can make for yourself, sandwiched in between small groups that you can explore. And we have Bible studies, and we have prayer times, and we have peer support groups, and we have art therapy groups, and we have substance abuse support groups. We have game night, we have talent night, open mic kind of thing. Just a whole bunch of ways to be safe for an hour and sort of reestablish some normalcy in your life before you go back out and deal with what most of us would consider a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so we do have transitory people, but I want to say today, even 20 years ago, almost all of our clients originated in Texas. That surprised me. It surprised most people. Like, oh, I was an engineer. I like data. Before the rest of the world liked data, I was busy trying to collect data. And today, almost all of our homeless young adults came from here. They aren't traveling as much. Expectations are different. Youth are different. The pandemic did something horrific to young people. I'm not sure what. Maybe to all of us, but especially to young people. And they just aren't as fully developed, so they're not as fully developed. They're not as independent. They need more guidance and counseling. And guidance, the one thing, we're not ashamed of it. You can get clothes, you can get food, but you're going to get guidance. And that's what we value, and we hope you will too, guidance.
Where's the center located?
So we used to be right across from campus. That became not a good, we were right next to University Presbyterian Church, how I know John, Pastor John in particular. But that became not ideal for a whole bunch of reasons, and now we're what I consider the real center of town, which moved north. Not surprising to you that the center of Austin moved north, but so we're at Justin Lane and Burnett Road. ride on a bus stop, be on the train 10 years from now if they ever build a train. Sorry, politicians. But anyway, it's the center of town and it's easy to get to. And we were really worried about whether moving would destroy us, but we actually have more clients now than we did then.
Okay. So in your experience now, focusing on issues of homelessness in Austin, Texas, and certainly over 20 years, there are ebbs and flows of systems that contribute to homelessness. What have been some of the key things that are timeless as to what leads to homelessness and why a lot of these young people are, in their 20s, are out on the streets?
So I focus on young people. God called me to focus on young people because they have needs that are different than older people. There's every single homeless person is an individual story, and it's a beautiful story, and they're a beautiful, valuable person. And that's something we as Christians get to use words for that the rest of the world struggles with. Mm-hmm. But I encourage us to use those words. Like, this is a child of God, created in God's image, and unique and wonderful, and we're lessened when they don't communicate with us, when we're not in communion with them. But a older homeless person has a story shape. They were up here somewhere, something happened. We might like to place blame, but perhaps it's my mom got cancer. I moved home to live with her. She passed away. Turns out my stepfather inherited everything and he kicked me out. And after 5 years of caring for my mom, I am homeless now. And when you say, what do you want to accomplish? They will describe getting back to where they were. Contrast that with the people I work with. They never launched, typically. They were in some type of family of origin that they didn't fit with very well. I don't assign blame. I don't know if it's their fault, family's fault. It matters not to me. They didn't fit well. And they were suddenly on their own without the ability to be on their own. And so, but when they come to the street, it's the best place they've ever been. Think about that for a minute.
Wow.
And 90% of our clients agree with that statement. When I came to the street, it's the best place I'd ever been. No one's telling me where to be, what to eat, what to wear, what to take. I'm still young. I may do all the things that a young person likes to do and experiment with, but I get to choose it. It's not being forced on me, and often things are forced on them. Relationships, violence, sexuality. And so I am free. Free is the word. I'm free. And so we tell them, maybe you're not on the wrong path, but this freedom, after a few years, if you're not careful, will turn into a different word, and that is trapped. We ask them, have you picked up bad habits yet? You need to guard against picking up bad habits. I want you to explore life. That's what every college kid does. But and I'm not a fan of everybody having to go to college. This is what everyone that age group does. But we want you to do so with some grace and some ability to fail and be forgiven. I mean, my daughter, both of my daughters have very non-traditional education paths. They tried and didn't succeed at first, but they did so in an environment where they could be caught. They could afford failure. And it's important that we create an environment where they can afford failure. And if you'll think, those of you who went to a university, if you'll think about the environment your university provided, you had proctors and mentors, and with God's grace, you never found out that there was actually a ombudsman office that was a set of lawyers designed to get you out of trouble so you haven't ruined your life yet and can come back and pay your tuition and get your degree. I mean, that's why college campus police exist, to help you make mistakes that aren't totally ruinous of your life. And so that's what we're trying to do, is help them get through this period of development, further development, that includes making mistakes and trying on identities and figuring out who you are and figuring out what you want without getting stuck.
Yeah, I think going back to one of the key words that you mentioned earlier, guidance, right? So even the young adults who do the traditional path of going to college, and they're surrounded by faculty advisors, faculty, administrative. Oh yeah, come on up here. Everyone, don't look at her bringing coffee.
Yeah, these are my interns, and they set up a little board over here, and at the end you can enter a raffle. And those of you on Zoom, if you wish to email, anyway, if you email Pastor Josh, I'll get you in the raffle. How's
there
that?
It is. So, I mean, you're surrounded by all these. In the institution that does have its controls, sometimes that are to protect itself, sometimes certainly to protect the students. But you can end up going through that experience without guidance and still graduate and not be able to launch.
Sure.
But, in this non-traditional path you were saying, what I heard you say is that freedom and that, what an odd word to think about, being a young adult living on the streets, and that being more free than what you exited
It is
from.
shocking, and I'm a big fan of market-driven forces. I'm a capitalist. I believe in paying attention to what people say, what people do. More importantly, even when they have the freedom, when the homeless people in the city of Austin had the freedom to be anywhere they wanted to, they ended up in places like what you have on your little brochure for this series, a camp right in front of a big office building downtown. That was a bridge too far and nobody liked it, but we have to pay attention to that. Like, they sent us a message. We don't like living out hidden in dangerous spots. We need to be close to something. And I believe in paying attention to market forces. You need to pay attention to how they solve their problems. And so I was shocked to hear this word freedom. I mourned and cried as I heard this word, I'm better off now than I was. But I asked lots of questions, but what that meant was no one's making me take my meds. I'm not on my meds anymore, and I don't have those terrible side effects. Now, maybe they need to be, but that's something they need the freedom to decide for themselves, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And maybe I am overindulging in substances, but I'm young, and this is what we did, and there's plenty of people who grew up in the 60s, and boy, could we tell some stories. So, I mean, it's what happens in young adults. They explore, they try things out, hopefully they learn from it, but they have to have this freedom to do it. So I was shocked to learn that they were free, and then, break your heart, but many of the other things are like, I'm free to choose my own sexual partners now. Before, they were forced on me. I'm free to pursue romance. Before, I was beaten. I mean, it's terrible. And that's why we work with young adults, because we see that they just need different things. They're not trying ever to get back where they came from. They're trying to figure out, where could I go? Who could I be? And that's exciting. I mean, there are bound to be some educators. It's a big enough group, there's at least one educator. That's exciting to figure out what people can be. And we're really like that hidden guidance counselor in high school, except for later.
Yeah.
Guidance counselor, hopefully no one in this room ever even knew what the guidance counselor does. But they're the person you go to when you say, I'm pregnant and I have no idea what to do. Or my dad just got put in jail and my mom just ran off with so-and-so and we're home alone, right? And the guidance counselor hopefully can say, I understand. Don't worry. We've got some resources. We're going to get through this together, right? Even though it's horrific and it's not a mainstream experience at all.
Yeah. Tell me about, I got a couple of questions I want to ask, and I want to make sure that the members of the church have chance to ask questions
Sure.
as well. I want to ask about stigmas and the city of Austin. When it comes to working with the homeless, And, I think one of the things that is a challenge for many persons who are living indoors, right, as they're driving through town, they see folks on corners and et cetera. There is a certain stigma that comes along with the community of those who are homeless. What would be some of your counsel, guidance, that you would offer to church members, whether your own church, our church, anybody, any citizen in their cars in the city, about overcoming some of the stigmas of people who are homeless?
Oh, I mean, first of all, just get to know somebody. But you need to do it in a safe environment. So you can volunteer with somebody. I mean, you can volunteer at Street Youth Ministry. You can volunteer at Alan Graham's place. You can volunteer a lot of places, and they and we have gone to a lot of efforts to make sure that you're going to not hurt people and they're not going to hurt you. That's not true if you go out by yourself on the streets. That's just, most homeless people are not going to hurt you, but there are bad actors amongst homeless people. There are bad actors amongst pastors. Mm-hmm. There are bad actors among police officers. There are bad actors among politicians. And we cannot it's a mistake to paint with too broad a brush. On the other hand, it's foolish to not pay attention. So, buddy up. We're a big fan of giving out manna bags. Roll down the window. Hi, what's your name? I have this, and blah, blah, blah. And they're asking for money. I suggest substituting a manna bag instead. And it's like, would this help? Don't just give it to them as if you're taking away that choice, right? Would this help? And if they say yes, give it to them and say, what's your name? My name is blah, blah, blah. And say, is there some way I can pray for you? Don't be as shy of the fact that, you can roll the window up. But don't be afraid of our biggest asset, which is prayer. And so that's what I suggest. Don't do it alone. You can get out of your car if you have a couple people, but I wouldn't personally anymore. And I work every day in it, I think we need to avoid buying the stereotype. Homeless people have been villainized, and I assure you they are about to be super villainized. We're about to hear that they are all crazy, they are all drug addicted. This is simply not true. It's not true in the whole population, and in my population, my population loves substances, right? But only 30% have a substance abuse issue. 90% have used a substance, but that's true on campus. That's true in your high school, probably. It's true in this church population, probably. We don't have to get all wrapped around the axle about that. A minority have a drug abuse, substance abuse problem, i.e., if I don't get it, my body starts having withdrawal. Same with mental health. I love to point to the 60s. In the 60s, if you were alive, I watched my mom do it. She bought a little pill at the little box pills at the drugstore and took them while she ironed. And oh my goodness, did those methamphetamine pills that she took make her iron fast. It also made her irritable. It also made her unable to sleep. It completely changed who she was, and she recognized that and stopped taking them, right? And frankly, I imagine had withdrawals for several months. When you don't get good nutrition, when you don't sleep well, when you have poisons in your system in the form of foreign substances that don't belong there, you develop all kinds of symptoms. My daughter was anorexic. I could have had her diagnosed with any mental health disease you wanted at different stages of that progression. She had anorexia. She didn't have any of the other things that she could have been diagnosed with. She got completely better. And this is the funny thing about homeless mental health. When they get rest, safety, low stress, nutrition, I'm not saying they all get better, but a shocking number of them get better. And so we need to be careful. They have mental health challenges, yes. Are they irredeemable? No. Are they still valuable? Absolutely. Right? And we have, so I think these are some of the pitfalls of the stigma to worry about.
Yeah.
And the two biggest ones right now are, well, they're all crazy. And it's like, no, they're not. There are bad actors among them who can't get help or have gotten such poor help in the past that they figure they're better off the way they are right now.
Right.
And we speak truth to them. Our Easter newsletter has a story about a kid who, was doing great, went off his meds, didn't do so well, became depressed again, all this stuff. We have spoken the truth to him repeatedly, but it remains his choice. And now he's finally advocating, for himself that he get the meds he needs. Unfortunately, the meds he needs that have always worked are no longer paid for by anyone, and it's impossible for him to pay for them. It would be impossible for us to pay for them.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know what he's going to have to do, but it's not really what we think a lot of times.
Yeah. So, in the 2 decades that you've been working with this, you're in the heart of Austin, and you have a convergence of not only the city of Austin and its leadership, but also the shadow of the state capitol, Texas legislature, and whatnot. In what ways have there been positive engagement and negative engagement with the systemic, more political mechanisms, either of Austin or of Texas, that have either been helpful or hindered your work?
You're right. There's been a lot. I will say, when we first started, it was laughable that a homeless young adult would ever see a dime of government support beyond food stamps, and if they fought hard for it and lied a bunch, they might somehow get disability eventually. There was never housing in the picture, ever. It was impossible. Government funded. I mean, it was just ludicrous. And the Arch was a dangerous, overcrowded place that they would never, ever have stayed at. So they stayed outside. They always got jobs. It's shocking that they can always get jobs. Still true today. Getting that first employment is not a barrier. Keeping the job might be a barrier, and finding a way to move up is a barrier. But so things that I've seen, the finest thing, and I will say 20 years ago when I started, when it froze, people froze. There were deaths on the street every year of frozen bodies, sometimes right on the front step of a church, right? At the same time, there were cold weather shelters sporadically run by churches. No one worried about, like, can you stay outside? We used to do cold weather shelter responses. I'd go out with we jokingly called it a sleigh. My truck is a big pickup truck, and it would just be piled as high as you could pile it, tied down with a tarp full of sleeping bags and blankets and coats and whatever donated. None of my friends have any of these items in their houses anymore. None. We need yours. But I don't need to do that anymore because the city does a much better job of making sure those who want shelter in freezing weather get it. There's a lot of expectation around that. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but we've all voted with our feet. It's their job. They can do it. It's ridiculously expensive. That's the other thing the city has done. We are spending $100 million plus directly on homeless a year. And there is considerable debate as to whether we have $100 million worth of benefit to show for it. And indirectly, we're spending 2 to 3 times that. I was on a task force to help the city figure out what all the other departments were spending in response to homelessness, and it's the total is 2 to 3 times as much as the direct. But we're trying, which I think says a lot. The state,
It's okay. And let me just...
The one thing I've seen the state do that I would say was a phenomenal success was say, well, they can't sleep out in front of the Capitol steps anymore, but they can sleep on this vacant lot over there.
Across the street.
No,
Oh,
not across the
the
street.
vacant lot out in
The
East
vacant
Austin.
lot, it became what's
Yeah.
known as Campa Esperanza, named by the people who were running it, who were living there.
Right.
But it's the one and only that has ever been contributed. It's a failure that we have never done so again. It's a failure of city government that they didn't. It's a failure of state government that they didn't. And I'm ticked about it, to be honest with you. Everyone should have a legal place to stay. And they are already staying outside. Why can't we at least make it sanctioned primitive camping instead of unsanctioned primitive camping? And if we don't like that, fine, start working on reducing the amount of sanctioned primitive camping and provide other options. But everyone should be able to have a place to stay that's stable and doesn't make them a criminal instantly. And that's where we are. And you've had, and police officers are doing a really nice job of looking the other way and saying, well, you're technically a criminal, but I won't do anything about it. And that's compassionate, in my opinion. However, I think the pendulum's swinging further away from that. I think in 2 or 3 years, we'll see something quite different.
Say more about that, what that might
Well,
look like.
The federal government is about to end housing first, if Team 47 has anything to do with it. They intend to eliminate housing first. I'm not sure housing first is a great thing either. It's a program by the HUD for the last 20 years that says you cannot put strings on housing, you must just provide housing. And in the city of Austin, that means we're spending $1,800 a month for market rate housing for homeless people, as many as they will pay for. And it's federal money, so, some people say, oh, it doesn't matter, but that's our money. And there's not enough of it, and it's slowed down, but I believe Team 47 has decided that if you won't accept mental health help and or drug assistance help, you may not receive housing anymore.
Okay.
And that's what I mean by I think it's going to end. The Secretary of HUD has been pretty clear about it, and President Trump is rumored to be writing one of his executive orders to pronounce the death of Housing First initiatives. I have seen how it's not awesome. When Housing First came to Austin for homeless young adults, it was a brand new branch of the program. There was always supported housing, but for the last 5, 6, 7 years maybe, we've had a special program that allows a homeless young adult 24 years and younger, so half of my population, 24 years and younger, can apply to receive up to 3 years of supported housing for free. And we, the social workers, said there need to be readiness conditions and strings on this. There need to be coaching provided. And the HUD said, no, you may not have the money if you do that. You may not. And so we made it voluntary, and out of the first 47 who entered the program, we preached, pushed, flyered, visited, and not one out of 47 took the voluntary coaching. Not one. Right? And as a result, we do a lot of harm. I think we have to raise the standard of care in social work. Doctors for a long time have lived with do no harm. I think homeless work needs to raise the standard of care. The argument is, well, we help some of them. If we can figure out who we're going to help, pick them. But if we're going to offer services to people that hurt others, we should probably try to figure that out and stop doing that. I think we need to raise the standard of care we help some, some don't work out, but some do. We need better than that. They deserve better than that, and we deserve better than that.
Yeah.
Do no harm.
Thank you for that. Let's take some questions from the congregation. What questions do you have? And because we can hear you, the folks on the YouTube cannot, I'm going to repeat whatever question you have. Emily, please.
I just not ever heard of this before, what services were out there. I'm thankful, thank you for participating and
I was shocked 20 years ago when I started simply because somebody at Covenant Presbyterian Church was doing a meal for homeless. That's all they said. It was called Daily Bread. They were doing a meal for homeless, and they were looking for volunteers to serve it. I came back from, one of these mountaintop high experiences on a short-term mission trip, and I was looking to volunteer, and I said, okay, sure, I'll do that. And I went, and to be honest with you, I hated it the first time because there was no interaction, no nothing, and I was looking for something more than that. And I called the lady and said, nah, not for me, and she broke down crying. Turns out she was pregnant. Turns out she was going to have to end the program if she couldn't figure out some way to get it stable. And I said, well, it's not for me, but tell you what, for a month I'll do it. And that'll give you time to figure out. So you get the food there, and I'll take care of the volunteers, don't worry. And after a month, I had realized who I was serving. I didn't even know they were really young, but I had figured out who I was serving. I had gotten down on my knees with knee pads and started asking them their name, right? There are people alive who remember the line slowing down. That was my fault because I wanted to know their name. I did not just want to sling hash out of a tiny little serving window and go home. And so I'm like, well, I'm here. I promised to be here. I'm going to make something of it, right? And at the end of that month, I called her up and said, I'll keep doing it. Because I had realized it could be personal. And I did all kinds of tricks to engage and whatever. But that's where I learned engagement. But I had no idea there were young adults in the community. There is a social work agency in town called LifeWorks. That was who I was helping with the meal. I was partners with them for a very, very long time. They cannot do faith. I can. And I was surprised that anybody cared, but they asked me to sit at table with the kids because they needed proctors, but they said, no faith stuff. What do you think they wanted to talk about? I swear to you. They would ask me the Job question, if your God's so good, why bad stuff happen, right? I mean, it's a universal question, and I'm like, well, if you'll stay, I'm not supposed to answer here. If you'll stay and out in the alley, I'll do it, right? But I mean, that's how I got started, and that's that listening to market needs. They have the questions. They just never trusted anybody to ask who didn't come back at them with like, well, how dare you ask that question? Of course God's good. I mean, I think it's a perfectly rational question. And if you've never had to ask that question yet, you're lucky. Life gives us opportunity to ask that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Caitlin, then Dave, and then we'll wrap up.
Can you speak more to, you mentioned wanting to help young people find a faith home, how your program goes about that and some of the faith aspects, and how receptive kids these days
Sure.
The question that
I'm
Caitlin,
sorry.
that's all right, no, you're good. The question Caitlin asked is, Terry had mentioned about helping those he serves find a faith home, and her question was, how do they go about helping them in that process? Is that fair? Okay.
Right. So, thanks for the question, and there are two shapes of ministry, and I'm going to use my hands again because that's what I do. You can have a program that's going to work really well for certain types of people in certain kinds of situations if they'll do certain things, and I call that a deep program. It probably has a limited number of participants available, so a certain number of people can enter the program, and you will do certain things, and you will exit the program. And we try to look for programs like that have, and so like, I'm going to guess that the house you're going to visit on a field trip is one of those. They have a certain number of beds, and they look for a certain type of people they can serve. And so we try to know where all of those little deep services are and inform people. But a young adult needs to be free to make the choice, and that's a pitfall to avoid. Don't ever make homeless people do something. It's just going to fail. But anyway, we are what we call a broad ministry. We don't have a program. We accept We want to find all the people at risk of homelessness, homeless and recovering from homeless, who are young, and see if they can make use of our resources and see if they'll get to know our 8 people who care and are really trained to deal with so many problems, and try to identify that main thing. We try to identify, like, what do we think is the main reason this person's struggling? Is it, and there are five or six categories, is it, and we'll start with the 2 popular, mental health and substance abuse, which covers less than 40% of the total population. Is it educational underattainment? Is it job underattainment? They're capable, but they're not there, or anyway. And there are a couple more, but medical is one. In the young adult area, often it's trauma recovery. They just went through such a traumatic childhood and young adulthood that they're just not recovered yet. So we work on that, but if they're interested in housing, we talk about the ways to get in line, the waiting lists, the ways to get in line, but it's kind of like the job market. You can look for listings, but if you are looking for a job, you network, because 90% of the jobs are never published, ever. And the same is true. The 90% of the beds available are never in a program. They belong to someone who needs extra money to make rent. They belong to someone who cares. And we don't broker that. We don't even know if that's safe, but it is what they do. Okay. And so we're a big fan of call your family and reconcile with them. Maybe not go home yet. We're a big fan, grandmas and grandpas are the safest people these people have ever known. Like, call grandma and grandpa, talk with them, find out if there's a resource they might know. Is there an aunt somewhere who you could live with? Is there a family resource? Is there a bed? Is there, in bad weather, get on the phone and start calling somebody and say, can I sleep on the couch or the floor for a while? And that's a harm reduction approach, but if you can get people started, harm reduction people are really right, and harm reduction is another thing there that appears to be swinging the other direction. Harm reduction says if you can give somebody one possible option to improve a very difficult situation, it's far from ideal, but it's one tiny way to make it a little better, then you will notice the following. They come back hungry for another little change. Mm-hmm. There's a belief that you might enable them to, like, you might be making a horrible situation easier to live in, but that's not true. What you're doing is creating an appetite for another little change and another little change. So if we can get them to couch surf or spend the night in shelter or call a friend and experience, like, not homelessness for a minute, then it's better. And we do a lot of talking about safe camping and responsible camping. Don't be a nuisance, and be good citizens and be good neighbors. These people didn't sign up for you to be out there in that woods. Be careful. And, buddy up with people you really trust, but and none of that's ideal, but it is the reality.
Okay. Thank you. Dave?
Really appreciate that you had felt that it was God's calling to be able to be focusing on the youth. Early in your description of your ministry, you had 4 pillars that you stated, and I wasn't quick enough to write them all down. Obviously, one is find a faith home, faith of which you just reiterated. What are those? And how, we're here because we wish to find our God's calling as well, and to be able to focus on someone or something, and developing those pillars of how to go about that is, another set of activities that I think we need to go through. And how did you come about finding it?
So Dave's question was asking about something that Terry had mentioned at the beginning about the 4 pillars of their work, and one of them being connecting with the faith community. And his follow-up question, or what were all 4 of those pillars? And then the follow-up question is, and if I get this right, Dave, is how might we go about that process of discernment as well, or like what our pillars would be. And I just want to add to that I think I'm a hand talker as well. The deep ministries and the broad ministries is very helpful in assessing all of the different things that we've already engaged, as well as what might be good for us to think about in our discernment process. But what were those 4 pillars again, and how might we begin a discernment process towards that?
So I'm happy to repeat them. I want to say my calling was egalitarian. It was wide. My goal has always been to meet as many homeless young adults as I can. If I see one across the street, I will jaywalk to get there. And this may shock you. I know lots and lots of older homeless people, but if I am walking down the street and I'm about to come across a group of older homeless people, it is very possible that I will jaywalk across the street to avoid them. And that may shock you, and I don't know if I'm ashamed of it, but it's true. I have a certain amount of energy, and I have a certain focus, and I have a certain expertise, and I know what I want to do with it. And I make my decisions every day around that. I am probably a preeminent expert in young adult homelessness. I have no idea if what I know applies to older homeless. I suspect it does, but I don't know. Our 4 pillars came from wanting to help everybody I could come in contact with who seemed to be young and homeless. And it was, I wanted more stability for you. And stability has about 47 components to it. And I'm an engineer and I can't help that. But it's like employment, ID, job, housing, and housing is not good enough. That's a topic we don't have enough time for. But housing needs to be broken down, and no one is doing a good job of it. And maybe in my twilight years, I'm going to try it. But so there's a whole bunch of medical, mental, you name it. There's a ton of stuff that goes into stability. But instability is the inability to plan tomorrow. We all plan. Plans may not work out, but if you're unstable, you can't even ask the question, what are you doing tomorrow? That's the definition of instability. It's a test. And most of my clients start in that shape, and we try to change that. And we have structured everything we do around those groups have a start time, and if you're late, you're late. We have an end time, and if you're too late, you're too late. And that sounds heartless, but it's not. It's loving, because they must understand I'm unstable and I can't get what I want. I'm delighted they want it, and I'm delighted they're hitting that friction. And as strange as it is, I'm happy to be part of that, because I know they're going to get better. It would be entirely different if they went, oh, who cares? Oh, I'm late. Oh, no big deal. That makes me sad. Right? They've lost them. So stability, sobriety, and maybe sobriety doesn't deserve its own spot, but it has one. And sobriety, our definition of sobriety is who's in charge, you or it. I don't care if you use, I don't care if you drink, I don't care if you smoke. I really, self-medication is a real thing, and after 20 years, I'm pretty realistic about it. If you can't get meds and you can't get therapy, then there are some street meds, street drugs that do the job. They come with horrible prices, however. I wish we could do better. But sobriety is who's in charge, you or it. Reconnecting with God. I was shocked to find out that every one of our homeless young adults has been churched. They've been in youth groups. One of the biggest things we can do, John knows how, but one of the biggest things that we can do that we're not doing is call up every youth pastor in the city of Austin and say, we know how to recognize the 1 out of 10 young adults who experience homelessness in your church group, because they're there. Do you want to recognize them? Do you want to know what to do? Do you want to know some resources? Because you could be their best friend. But they have no friends right now. And they're about to quit. They're about to not show up anymore. Right? But they were all churched. And what we're trying to do is reconnect that. And they all want, it's such a compliment when they want us to be like the good parts of the Bible that they've heard about. It's such a compliment. Well, you're supposed to be good. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but you didn't read the other half of the sentence. I want to do what I want to do, but I can't. I fail. It's such a compliment that they want the world to be that way, and it's natural. So we're just reconnecting them. And then we're trying to get them over the Christians they have met so far. Mm-hmm. They really don't have a problem with Christ. They're not sure Christ is real, but they don't have a problem with Christ. They have a problem with the Christians. And so we, and it's grace that's the one thing that's missing. Grace has not been taught. So they're sure about anyway, it's amazing how much they know, but we're reconnecting with God in that regard. And believing in Jesus is a goal, but we don't force it. And it sometimes is years before. Delightful emails come to me like, you're not going to believe this, Terry. After making fun of you and all your Jesus money and all that stuff all these years, I'm a Christian now. And I'm like, of course I believe it. It was always my prayer. But you were mighty mean to me all that time.
Yeah, right.
And then finally, the last one is is finding a faith home. Because it's not enough to be a Christian. Nobody can be a Christian alone. I know theologians can argue, but practically speaking, we cannot be Christians alone. Something magical happens when we find a church home. Whether it's a small group, a church, it really doesn't matter, a home, Lydia's home, it doesn't matter what it is. But we have to have a faith community to grow with God. And so we wanted those 4 things for them. And I'm not ashamed to say that's what our goals are. And oddly enough, homelessness is in the stability part, but get a home isn't on the list.
Yeah. And finally, what would be your counsel on how we might work on that discernment? Those 4 pillars are something that you didn't just wake up from a dream with.
Right. Well, I listened to the community. So I'm a big fan. I don't know if they're still in favor or not. There's this thing called the Center for World Mission. And they classified and systematized missiology for a while. And I don't know. They went around teaching some classes. I can't think of one of the more famous. Ralph Winters started it. And I don't know if they're still in favor or not, but and there's some reasons, I think they get into some Revelations type stuff that not all agree on. But I think we can all agree on the fundamentals of, cultures are neutral. All cultures are neutral. They contain good and bad things. And so you've got to be willing to learn the culture. And you don't want to destroy the culture. I have no interest in taking the street kid out of the people I serve. God put it there. And they do amazing things. We have former clients who are youth pastors, who are social workers, who are drug counselors, who are all kinds of things. Small business owners and landscapers and prosaic things too. But a lot of them have taken that thing that God gave them, that path that he put before them, and turned it into something amazing. And they did that. I did not do that. We're part of the story, but they did that. The glory goes to God and them. It's not a program we have, but it's what happens when people are nurtured. And so this missiology course, I personally think is really good, regardless of whether, like I said, I tuned out on if we can just reach the following, 972 more people groups, the world will end. I tuned out on that type of stuff because I'm not, anyway, that's not how I read Revelations. However, I think the culture is neutral. You need to learn it. You need to not break it. What we're trying to do is introduce God into it, or reintroduce God into it. He made it. He's present. We're just trying to help the people fall in love with Jesus.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you added earlier was you didn't just serve hash through a window. You said, "What's your name?"
No, I called the lady and quit.
You said, "What's your name?" And even when you were talking about the manna bags, the homeless bags, you said, would you like one of these? Giving them dignity, and then also, what's your name? How can I pray for you? And so what I heard from you in all of that, in this discernment process, listen, learn the culture with humility, and allow, I guess, ourselves to be shaped and formed by the input that your word, data, but the data
Sure.
that's coming in, and then take our cues from there.
We try all kinds of things, and the majority of the good ones came from clients' ideas. They told me it would be really cool if we could do laundry. I'm like, really? I mean, you're dirty. What difference does it make? You can't even take a shower. Why do you want your clothes clean? And it turns out there's a story there. If I can't do laundry, I have to throw my clothes away. And I like some of them, right? So I can never have favorite things. And I thought about that, and like, so there's a certain type of nobility and wonder. And I mean, open your closets. You have all kinds of clothes that speak all kinds of stories that you love, probably.
It's also why we don't.
And
throw
if you
out
had to
shoes.
throw them all away every day, that there's a piece of your higher being that just can't really come out and play. And God is sometimes in those pieces. And it's the little Legos of our life that matter too. You're not going to buy your way to happiness. You're not going to work your way to happiness. You're not going to get a title. You're not going to study your way to happiness. Happiness comes from those little moments, and we all know this.
Yeah.
Right? And they deserve that too. And so if we can find out what those things are, we can do it. I think it's okay to start small. God blew the side of my house off, right? I lost my job. I couldn't find another job. He provided a ton of money from the layoff package that no one could explain, including my boss. Like, wow, that's a lot. And I'm like, that is a lot. So, God made me do this. And certainly I had choice and did say yes after 5 years of being miserable. But I did not start big, right? And I started... There were two groups of people. I was the unpaid slave. They called it, what did they call it? It wasn't even intern. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I was a unpaid volunteer that they told to do exactly everything, so not really a volunteer, for a year at LifeWorks. And there was another faith-based group that served homeless travelers, and I was an intern for them. And I served coffee, and I took out trash, and I swept the floors, and I learned. For a year, I didn't start big. And then I found out that on Friday, everybody was closed because all churches close on Friday. And, so we went out with sandwiches on Friday and handed them out. And people go, well, we need clothes. So I collected some clothes and took 2 bags, And then turned out they needed shampoo and toiletries and soap. And so we got 3 bags. And after a while, I couldn't carry it. So I got volunteers. And that became our Friday outreach, and we still do outreach like 9 times a week. And listening to that, then people had all these Bible questions, and I went to University Presbyterian Church, had the biggest spiel prepared for pastor, she's a woman, Pastor Skaggs, Judy Skaggs. I had a presentation, I had a pitch. I was like, I wanted them to say yes to me using a room once a week to do Bible study for homeless young adults. And it's the first thing I'd ever done, and and she goes, we had our little talk, and she goes, the answer is yes. And I'm like, but I haven't. And she's, the answer is yes. And that room was never empty, ever. Who knew they would want to talk about the Bible? But they told me because they had all these questions. And everything we did was based on paying attention. And we just added one thing after another, after another, after another. It's a fascinating little chronology. About one event a year became like full-time and became a facility. But you don't have to start big. But you do have to start with the people you're trying to serve, whatever it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Everybody, thank you. As we come to a close, I want to encourage us to come participate in the raffle and to take a look at what has been set up. I do, for those of you who have the opportunity and the time to just take some moment now, answer the 3 questions, please do so. If not, then please do so before the end of today, especially for those of you who are watching on the YouTube. Let me know that you were with us today, and then also take the time to answer the 3 questions. I had sent this handout out in advance, but if you need another copy, email me and let me know. Let us take some time now to close in prayer. Let's pray. Creator of hope, as we go from this gathering, remind us that your Spirit moves us, guiding and strengthening us for the work that is ahead. May the seeds of compassion that have been planted here bloom into acts of kindness and transformation, and that it may be done for your glory and for the good of all. In the name of Jesus the Christ we pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
I'm available if you want. I got no place else to be.